1 week season.
Hey, and welcome in, OWS fam. So glad you are with us. We are back in the DFS lab. As always, this show presented by 1 week season, where we build a lineup on DraftKings, use that as a way to talk through the upcoming slate. In this case, we are looking at week 18, the final regular season slate of the 2024 NFL season. I'm your host, Cheeseman, and now I am joined by Papy. Papy, how's it going, man? How was week 17 for you? How you feeling about this? This is it, dude. As far as the regular season, of course, we still got playoffs.
Yeah, no, it's just still playoffs. I think I tell myself every year I'm going to take week 18 off. Never happens. Play it real. At the beginning of the season, I tell myself that week 18 you're gonna take off. You worked hard all year. No, never happens. So it's exciting. I had a great week 18 last year, so we'll see if it carries over into this year. Week 17, I stacked the Packers and the Vikings game, which unfortunately didn't work out on my main event team, but I did stack the Panthers game on my team. I bet, the next most on in my 3-entry max team. So that team did well. I think it scored like 195 or 196. So it got decently far up there and got me something back there. But unfortunately, didn't do anything in the main event, stacked the wrong game. It happens.
Yeah, it does, man. That Packers game was disappointing for me on many levels. Because I'm a Packers fan, so it was disappointing to see that. But yeah, from a fantasy perspective, it just was kind of a dud. So that's disappointing because those offenses certainly had the potential to put up nuclear-like scores, but did not. So my week was fairly good. I did focus more on the Carolina-Tampa Bay game. But didn't have any major sweats, unfortunately, because I was pretty much locked Josh Downs, and he just burned a hole in my lineup. Just every single one it seemed. It's like there's the 4 whatever measly points from Josh Downs. So that was that really sucked, man. Because other spots I hit pretty well, but that one I did not. So, but that's okay. Week 18, it's upon us, man. It's just crazy. We wait we wait through the spring and summer months for the NFL to get here. And I mean, I will say that like around week 12 or 13, it was like, man, it's been a long season. But now that it's week 18, I'm like, where did the time go? Like, it just has flown by once again. It's been a good season. And, but yeah, how you feeling about week 18? We don't have ownership to look at because you have obviously the 2-game slate on Saturday. So that's kind of the focus with the content providers right now. But what's your initial thoughts even on trying to like really dissect ownership for a week 18 slate where so much is up in the air even still?
Yeah, I mean, I always say the ownership guys have a really tough job, and I think this week is probably the hardest of the ownership weeks because it's tough to know how are people going to react to how much somebody needs a game, how are different coaches going to react. There's a lot of situations where coaches are ambiguous. I think the Texans are locked into their seed, and their coach said something along the lines of, "Well, all the starters are going to be ready to play, and we're going to see what happens in the game." So, what does that really mean? And that's not the only sort of situation like that. I mean, I would take it as I guess the starters are going to play, and then they're going to probably not play the whole game, but that could be one quarter, it could be one drive, it could be 3 quarters. So, it's very difficult to know in certain situations. And then other situations are obviously more clear, but factoring in, motivation week 18 is always an interesting challenge.
Yes, it absolutely is. And we'll look at it in just a second here, but we have a sense of like a few of the teams that like definitely like there's no question that they should be motivated and playing this like all out to win. And then there are some teams where it's clear they don't have the motivation, and then there are kind of those in between where it's questionable, like you said. And so with that, man, let's jump in here to DraftKings and got the Millionaire Maker pulled up. And man, where do you want to start on this build?
So we can go with our game stack here, and it's gonna be a good chunk of the lineup. We're gonna go with the Colts stack. We're gonna go with Flacco, who I think is gonna play again. Richardson hasn't practiced, and I mean, we'll see what happens today. But if he doesn't practice again today, I think he'll probably miss again, especially in a game that is meaningless for them. And we're gonna go right back to the well here from last week. We're gonna go with Pierce and Pittman as a double stack with Flacco. And it's interesting that you mentioned Downs in your recap of last week, and I had Downs as well. Actually, I had Downs on my main event team. Of course, it was ended up being like by far my worst team, but I had the other Colts receivers sprinkled in throughout the rest of my lineup, so I wasn't like all Downs. I was sort of like, it's going to be one of these guys. And I ended up, regretting playing Downs once I saw ownership because he was so, much heavier owned than the other two. And it just ends up being where he really was in a traditional like number 3 wide receiver role. And I think he saw 63% of the snaps and the other guys saw 90%. They were playing, the top 2 receiver roles, and Flacco, got them both over 100 yards. And it was like Downs was just totally left out. And so it's interesting now when we look at this week and we say, okay, well, it worked last week. Their prices didn't really all go up very much. And the matchup is better, against the Jaguars, who have the worst secondary in the league. From a motivation standpoint, I always sort of dislike playing guys in week 18 who are in a Colts situation where they lost last week. That eliminated them. And now it's like, okay, well, we have this one meaningless game. I guess I'd prefer my teams to be eliminated earlier and be used to playing meaningless games. But I don't think it will necessarily matter, especially if Flacco is the starter, because I think Flacco knows he's not getting that many more NFL starts. Like, I think he'll come out and sort of be his normal self. And I do think that they will probably play, to win for the most part. Again, they're at home. I feel like Flacco will try. They'll play their receivers. They won't want to come out and look like, well, we got eliminated and now we're going to lay down and not even try. So I feel like they will have, at least they'll try normally. And if anything, it would probably make sense to take it easy on Jonathan Taylor. If you wanted one guy to take it easy on and say, well, let's not beat him into the ground here. We signed him to a long-term deal and he's our running back. So
yeah, he doesn't need 30 carries.
Yeah. What do you care about Joe Flacco's arm? So I think that this stack still makes sense. I would hope that maybe people won't want to play it because it worked last week and almost it feels too like easy, to just be like, oh, I'm just going to do the exact same thing that worked last week. But the elements are definitely there. I mean, if they use those two guys the same way they used them last week against the Jaguars, why wouldn't it work? So, I think maybe just keep it simple here. And then the obvious bring back of Brian Thomas Jr. If you're going to play, the Colts stack, Brian Thomas Jr. feels like almost sort of a must, because you're saying, all right, both teams play to win, and the Jaguars are the kind of team I like. They've been done for a while, so
yeah, they've still been like playing hard.
Yeah, like there's no reason to think they'll not try to get Brian Thomas Jr. more rookie accolades. I think I can't remember exactly, but I think he's around some milestones to be one of the better rookie years that we've seen. So no reason to think they won't just keep trying to get him the ball. So I think just going right back to the well, sort of with the Colts, that Colts game environment is totally fine. And that's my plan for the main stack on this one.
I like it.
Yeah. Running back.
I was just going to say real quick, I think that it is kind of like sneaky. I like the stack, and I wasn't expecting this, which is why I think that's good, is because I think a lot of people are just going to say, well, I'm just not even going to play teams that don't have like playoff motivation on the line. And like you just said, and you kind of made a similar call like a few weeks back where you said that was the Aaron Rodgers week where he blew up. And it wasn't like the Jets were really playing for anything, but it was more like, hey, Rodgers still wants to play well. He still wants to show that he's got it. And I could see the same here for Joe Flacco. And I mean, once these players get in a game environment, it's not like the players are like, oh, I don't really care to win this. Like, they still want to win. It's more about like the play calling and that kind of thing. And so there's really no reason to think, they're just going to be like, oh, let's just run our backup RB2s the whole game. I mean, you still have fans attending the game. I don't see why you wouldn't want to try to win, but I like this because I think a lot of the field will say it doesn't have playoff motivation, so I'll fade it.
Yeah, and also just that like sort of, well, it worked last week. Like it's too like, all right, we'll just do
point chasing.
That'll never work again. But it could strike twice.
Absolutely could.
At
Yeah,
at
go ahead.
running back, I think the play of the week is Robinson, Bijan Robinson from the Falcons. Yeah, I think he's just sort of the play of the week. Like there's all the elements that you really look for there. He's getting the work. He has motivation. They're going to try to win. Playing at home against the Panthers, it's not gonna sneak up on anybody, but it's hard to get away from that one. Other than just a general ownership fade, I'm sure he's going to be very popular, but sometimes you just play the popular running back.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, it's a lot of times playing the chalk at running back in many ways is just optimal, like trying to be different in other ways.
So for second spot, go to the Arizona San Francisco game.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Now, this is something that I debated here because you can look at either of their running backs, really, right? Because you can say make a case for both of them, right?
Yeah.
I think Michael Carter is the guy who's going to get the start for Arizona, and he's only 4,700. He's at home. I think he got most of the work after Connor went down, or is projected to, certainly. So he's a pretty obvious play. Certainly can't go wrong there. And then on the San Francisco side, and you can take out Carter. We're actually not gonna use Carter here. We're gonna go the other way. We're gonna use San Francisco.
Jump the gun.
Yeah, no, jumping the gun. I mean, this was an internal debate I had, and I certainly thought about using both. But Garendo, he's 5,900, right below Connor.
Garendo.
He is supposed to get the start again. Great matchup. And it's like, okay, well, which one do you want? Do you want both? I could see playing both. I toyed around with lineups playing both. For this one, we're just going to go on the San Francisco side. But I think one of those two guys is someone I'm probably going to use in most of my lineups, I feel like, this week. Yep,
absolutely love it. That Garendo he didn't quite break it out on Monday Night Football. And so, who knows? Maybe his ownership will be certainly if he had had a massive game on Monday night, his ownership would certainly be higher.
Yeah, and it's a good match. Again, they just should run their normal offense, I would think, and that's a lot of running the ball. If they do just try to say, all right, let's get this one over with and run the ball a lot, okay, good for him.
Yeah.
So I think he makes sense. At tight end, we're going to go cheap, and we're going to go with Tucker Kraft from Green Bay. And Green Bay is an interesting situation where they can only really move between wild card spots. They have some motivation. It's hard to know exactly how hard they're going to play. I feel like if they do take it easy on anybody, it's probably going to be Josh Jacobs. But I'm willing to say, I guess I think that they will try to win this game. And I just think, again, they're at home. There's, they're going to say, okay, well, we are technically still playing for something. We could move up or down, so there is technically still a little bit on the line. So let's just play hard, at least deep into the game. Now, I'm not saying if they're killing them that they won't maybe take people out earlier. They might. But I do think if it's a competitive game, that they will probably keep their starters in throughout. And I think that if they're killing them, well, you still have a chance that maybe the cheap tight end got 2 of those touchdowns, and it's like, okay, well, it's not that big a deal. He got it on the way there. So I think he's an okay play from a couple of different angles. I think the only way it would really not be is if they truly just decide to say, we're not going to try this game. And if there's any indication of that before the game, if there's coach speak, then by all means, change. Obviously, don't play Packers. But as of right now, I don't think there's anything indicating they're not just going to try hard. So I think it's okay to go with Kraft.
At least in the first half. I mean, I'm sure that if they look at the Washington-Dallas game and Washington's up by 20 at the half, maybe they'll just say, oh, nothing's going to change. Second half, we're just going to kind of take it easy. But if that game is close, then I could see them, continue. We need to win this. We need to keep our foot on the gas. By the way, it's going to be cold in Green Bay. It's going to be a high of 22 that day with wind sustained 6 to 10 miles per hour. So it will feel cold. It's probably cold it's cold where it's cold everywhere right now.
Yeah. So saying it sounds like a tight end game. Is that what I'm hearing?
It does. It does. Yes, kind of those shorter passes. Not as much a Christian Watson game, even if he was healthy.
Yeah, which I'm sure he won't play because Christian Watson hates playing. And you saw James Conner, finally goes on the IR week 18. So you sit there and you say, I didn't really love you in best ball because I thought you would just get hurt. So of course you get hurt week 18. So I can't even say you made it all the way through the year healthy for the first time.
Yeah.
So at defense this week, I like the Buccaneers a lot. And I know the most expensive one is different. You're used to scrolling down. This is because I think you have to account for the Bucs in some way. They're probably going to kill the Saints, and you certainly can account for that by simply stacking their offense, which I will have games that I do that on, and I think that will probably also be a very popular thing to do. But it's interesting because the Saints are so bad that if the Bucs get a big lead and the Saints look hopeless, much like they did against the Packers, where it was like they were so obviously hopeless that even up, like 21 or 24 was like, all right, well, we'll just like let their offense keep doing nothing and, rest our guys. That could happen here. If the Bucs get up like 24-0 or something at halftime and the Saints have thrown a pick six, and it's like, they just look totally hopeless. They have like 1 or 2 first downs. They might just sort of say, all right, all we're going to do here is run, and we're going to use the backups a little bit more, and they might. So, basically playing the Bucs defense, I think, is a way to sort of account for that and say like, all right, well, in that scenario, the Bucs defense is probably doing really well. And if they leave the players in, it'll probably be on the defensive side just to keep them from scoring. So
yeah,
I feel like that's a way to account for it. And people, they probably won't be as chalky as they should be just because they're the most expensive defense, but they're not the most expensive defense by a lot. And other times when you see a defense that's like more expensive than the field, it's a couple $100 more expensive than the field. It's only the most expensive by, $100. And then there's several defenses that are just below it within a couple $100. So it's not like, all right, I'm playing the 4,500, defense that everybody thinks is going to win. You're still sort of in the range here, and there is a chance that it does really well.
Yes, absolutely, man. And I like how you kind of just make the mention of trying to account for the Buccaneers in some way on this roster, even if you're not going on this one, the all-out stack.
Yeah. And so then we're left with 5,400, and this is where sort of I was looking at different flexes and, trying to figure out, does someone, a little cheaper, does he make sense? It felt sort of Michael Carter kicked into my mind. I was like, you are leaving a lot on the table going down to Michael Carter, although you could. But there is Calvin Ridley there at 5,400, who I think is an interesting play this week, sort of because of what I was saying about the motivation for the Texans. They have absolutely none. They're one of the clearest, like, we are locked into our playoff spot that there is. They can't move. They're not going anywhere. That's it. So they have really no reason to play their starters. And I know that the head coach has said, like, all the starters are going to be ready. Like, but he also said, we'll see what happens in the game. That to me means that their starters probably aren't going to play more than the first half. And if they come out and like score an opening drive touchdown, and it's like, all right, they look good, then they might only play like a drive. So I think that Ridley is a good play, sort of in the sense of like, he won't get the week 18 steam of like, oh, Houston's going to sit all their starters, because that's not really what they're saying. But they definitely could sit their starters sooner rather than later in that game. So I think that, bringing in Ridley and basically saying, well, the Titans have been out of it for a while, and they're probably just going to play as is. And against backups, he could just have a 8-catch, 100-yard touchdown type of day. So I think that's why he makes sense.
Yep, love it, dude. And that finishes out the lineup. So what we ended on here for those listening on the podcast, you have Joe Flacco stacked with Alec Pierce and Pittman Jr., the bringback of Brian Thomas Jr., and then Bijan Robinson, Garendo at the 2 running backs, Kraft at the tight end, Calvin Ridley, flex, and Buccaneers defense. Pappy, great stuff, man. As always. Any final thoughts, man, before we ship this one off for Week 18, final regular season slate, brother?
Yeah, no, it's been great being here and doing this. It's a lot of fun. The first time sort of doing like a lineup builder on the podcast. It's been a blast. And look forward to everyone's having a great Week 18. I'll see you guys at the top.
Absolutely, man. Yes, everyone, thanks for tuning in all season long. Pappy, likewise, it's been super fun doing the show with you. And I hope to see everyone at the top of the leaderboards, guys. Have a great Week 18, and we'll catch you next time.